Over 300 tenants at 2 Toronto condos are holding a rent strike.
These tenants say that they have been dealing with absorbent rent increases.
3 months after the start of a strike involving tenants not paying rent at 2 properties in the Weston neighborhood, asking that Dream Unlimited not increase rents more than provincial guidelines.
We're a community where it's about 50-50. 50% homeowners, 50% renters.
You have the homeowners on the other side of the tracks, and then you have the renters on the other side. So we almost have a neighborhood of extremes here in Weston.
We all live there. We all use the community. We shop in the community. We all appreciate the community. I don't think anybody will stay somewhere for a long time if they didn't love where they lived. That's just me. I feel the way. I love where I live. My kids love it. My husband loves it. We're going to stay.
I've had to call 411 numerous times just because our heating gets turned off.
They should take this seriously. It's affecting everybody, not only one person.
If you've been following national news in Canada or local news anywhere within Canada, you've probably heard the term housing come up more times than you can count. Or you probably feel that way at least. Constant disagreements about what the solutions are to housing issues, or if there even are housing issues, make it really overwhelming and intimidating to talk and think about this issue. But underneath every morning show host you see on TV expressing shock at a record home price, and underneath every investor you hear on the radio, fear-mongering that home prices fell X% in Y month. Underneath all of this, there are human beings, and often, those human beings are tenants. Furthermore, they often live in buildings created and owned not to provide housing, but as an investment vehicle for a large corporate landlord. You may live in one yourself. Nearly a quarter of Canadian tenants do. So what happens when these corporate landlords take drastic moves to increase profits? What happens to tenants when rent is constantly increased, when services within a building are slashed, and when buildings are neglected? Well, this is a story about that, and it's a story about a group of tenants in Toronto who found themselves fighting against a corporate landlord and standing up for housing. This is the story of 33 King Street.
My name is Charlene Henry. I am the co-chair of the York South-Weston Tenant Union, and I am the chairperson of the 33 King Street Tenant Association that is currently on a rent strike. So I've lived in the building since 2004, so about 19 years now. And I initially moved there because my now husband and I lived in the area, and it worked. It's close to the highway, it had access to train, easy to get to the subway no matter where you work. And I wanted to be able to be accessible to the east, the north, the south, the west. And so I looked for the cheapest building in the neighborhood that wasn't crap. So that's why I moved there. So the tenant union started back, I'm going to say in 2018. We were fine-tuning how we were going to have it, what our values would be, what we would do for the community. And we call it a tenant union because we really wanted to have it open to everyone who lived in the community who was a renter and be based on labor values. So nobody would be left behind. It'd be inclusive to everybody, and you could automatically join as long as you were a renter. And we could help guide you, be it any issues you had in your building. And mostly it was because the neighborhood was being hit with a lot of above guideline rent increases at the time. And for our building specifically, it's a very big building, 27 stories, 340 units, 1,000 people live there. It's busy, it's big. A lot of people live there for a long time. I knew that at the time when I moved in. There were people who'd been there for years because you see them in the community. But now that I've been door knocking more in the past 3-4 years, you really do get an opportunity to speak with people who've been there for 30, 40 years in that same building. And that's their home, and this is their community, and they've lived there most of their adult life. So our timeline was basically, we knew we had 3 above guideline increases coming. So we had 2018, 2019, and 2021. And that was back since 2018, we knew that. Going into COVID, we knew that the Landlord Tenant Board took about a year to see a hearing. We were going to fight the 2018 because we didn't agree with it. It was 3% above the guideline at the time. And it took until 2022 spring for our case to be called, which is 4 long years. And in those 4 years, we had 2 more, including the year where the Doug Ford government said no rent increases. So when I went around canvassing and talking to my neighbors, they're like, but Doug Ford said no rent increases. I said, but the loophole is above guidelines are excluded from that. So it's about educating people. So tenant union, we just educate people on what their rights are. So that all happened and people were just pissed. And we did some grassroots organizing. We put bright yellow signs on our balcony, stop raising our rents. And it's a large building in our neighborhood and people saw it from kilometers away and are like, what's that all about? They'll be at the park. Why are those signs on your building? They're raising our rents, like ludicrous amounts every single year. And it's not in any better shape than it was before they raised the rents. So we did that. We did a phone zap to our landlord CEO, to Michael Cooper. We did rallies. We did protests. We signed petitions. We asked for meetings. We asked for mediation. And nobody listened.
When I say rent, you say strike. Rent! Strike! Rent! Strike! We're gonna fight back, and we're showing that we're fighting back today. And that's what we're doing here. We have tenants from 33 King Street who've been on a 5-month rent strike. Give it up for them. Give it up for 33 King.
2018 was a very interesting year because in 2022, they agreed to sit down with our lawyers before we went to the landlord-tenant board, and we mediated very publicly with our tenant union members. We set up in Weston Commons in the Artscape, set up a room so people can come and view the Zoom. Nothing was hidden. We had lawyers, but it went between the lawyers and then came to us. And we got 50% off of that rent increase, which was amazing. It was a victory. It was equaled over $1 million over 5 years for people to be saving in the building. But when it came time to fulfill the order, because we asked for a ledger, it was 4 years later. Everyone needs to see what they paid up until then, what they're owed, if they owe anything, because some people opt out of above guideline increases, some people pay into it. No one got a rebate. When we calculated for people, which should be the minimal $500, but some people paid more rent, it could be of $1,000. So nobody got a rebate on October 1st of last year when we got the ledgers. And that's when it went nuts, where people were like, well, what's going on? Well, what happened? They have a court order. They should have fulfilled it. And that fueled the rent strike. It fueled people to become more involved and say, hey, no, this is nonsense. This company hasn't fulfilled their part. We fulfilled our part. Now, how are they going to fulfill their part?
My name is Faisal Hassan. I'm former member of Provincial Parliament. I'm also a resident over 23 years in this community. And as you can see today here, the tenants, they are on a rent strike because the landlords every year has been increasing rent. And as you know, the legislation at the moment in the Ontario jurisdiction is that the landlords have more power. In other words, the tenant and landlord relationship is more favorable to the landlords. And as you know, there are annual rent increases every year. In addition to that, there's also above guideline rent increases. And above guideline increases, the intentions or the intent of it has been abused because the landlords are simply using it another way of just increasing the rent for tenants. And this has been going on for quite some time, with the election of Doug Ford being the premier. Also in 2018, also lifted all the rent control mechanisms. And we need to ban above guideline rent increases because the landlords have just abused it, and the original intention was to use times when they use like fixing the elevators and balconies and things like that, but they haven't been doing these things for years, and every year they have just submitted, and there's no check and balance for what they're doing. This hurts the tenants who are decent, hard-working members of our community, and we need to end it.
So that fueled the fire, and we just kept going. We kept organizing and doing different things for the company Dream to say, hey, these people are doing these actions. We need to pay attention.
We are not going to take it anymore.
Asking for every year 3%, 2.5% continue from 2016 to now continue.
My rent actually was $1,100. Now, in this year, like altogether, it's like $1,400.
33 King Street has had the most above guideline increases in the past decade in the city of Toronto. That's 6. That's a lot of money for people who are living on a fixed income, who are people who are new to Canada, new to Toronto, just surviving, living hand to mouth. That's a lot of rent increases over a decade. And most of the people that are affected by these above guideline increases have been there for at least 10 years or more. So back in the spring of this year, we started having meetings. What can we do to make them pay attention to us? We've done this. We've had rallies. We've had protests. We've had petitions. We've emailed them. We've asked for them to meet with us. They're not listening. What can we do? And my mom, being the rebel that she is, suggested, why don't we go on a rent strike? Because we have talked about it in the past, and we thought, oh, rent strike. Can we really do that? Can we organize this building and do a rent strike? And she said, I think we should. They owe us, majority of us, money, and going forward, everybody sees what's happening in the building. We have like 5 projects going on right now. Painting, windows, balconies, inside repairs. We have so many things going on. We know there's more to come. It's not stopping. It's not going to end.
Condition is a bad condition. Too much maintenance work. Is outside, inside, apartment too.
The construction in the building, the inconvenience of the balcony, and really, really poor management skills.
I've had to call 411 numerous times just because our heating gets turned off, like for the water. There's sometimes where I take a shower, it's ice cold, or else like just power will go off. Yeah, just certain conditions I don't think reflect the price point accurately.
So we figured out that we're going to get some lawyers, and we got a Community Justice Collective involved, and they've done a rent strike before, and they came and did a presentation and let people think about it. Because for us, we don't go by one, we go by majority. So we vote. We're really fair. People have their say. People can ask a million questions. We want people to feel educated in what they're doing and be confident in what they're doing. And 6 weeks or so passed, we're going on a rent strike. And that was in early May. We decided we're going to call a rent strike for June 1st. If we can get half of the building to sign a strike card and say, I'm not going to pay my rent on June 1st, and I'm going to stand in solidarity with our tenant association and ask for a list of demands, we're going to have a rent strike. So it's ironic that on May 1st, Thorncliffe Park went on a rent strike, and I'm there cheering while I saw it flash by on YouTube. I'm like, yes, someone's doing it. And then when I researched, I found out it was the exact same things, above guideline increases, and a lot of them. So we decided to organize more from there, educate folks, and invite people to a meeting in our neighborhood to say, hey, how can we really do this, and can we commit to this? We talked about if we were going to put the money in a bank account, in a trust, if we were going to keep it, so many different things. We talked about what we wanted from the company, what our demands would be. We ended up having many demands, but we narrowed them down to a few, which was to take away the 2019 and 2021 AGI, and to commit to no more above guideline increases, and to give us rent abatement for all the construction that's been happening, because we're paying more for less. We've lost our pool, we've lost our balconies for over a year. There's so many projects happening in the building that the loss of service, like in the past 2 months, we haven't had a 4th elevator. So we were asking for money back for rent abatement as well. But we're still about 200 because every week we canvass and door knock and talk to our neighbors. We have volunteers in the building who do it. So it stayed steady at about 200. Some people have paid back for whatever reason is, but then have rejoined because we're heading into our 6th month right now. So people really are understanding the value of it. And people who were dead set against it are now like, I'm going to join because this construction is taking too long. The windows, I have to be out of my home for 3 days. How inconvenient is that? I'm joining, I'm with you, I stand with you. So it's growing. And it grew to our neighbor building, 22 John, who's not rent controlled like us, so doesn't have above guideline increases, but has rent rates go up by 17% each year, which is ludicrous in a luxury building in the city of Toronto. And they've joined us, and we have about 100 folks on a rent strike there. So in our little cul-de-sac of 2 buildings, we have about 300 units on a rent strike with one landlord, Dream Unlimited. There's been many tactics that they have come with, sending letters to the doors saying what you're doing is illegal. We believe in community. Contact us to make payment arrangements. So people get scared and went back and paid it. When you get the N4 or the L1 in the mailbox, there's automatic fear. And I'll be honest, the first group of people who got it, when I asked, are you afraid? If you're scared, put your hand up. Majority of them put their hand up. And one lady told me, I've never not paid my rent on time. So imagine going from always paying your rent on time to now not even paying your rent, holding it. So there's always going to be fear. And that's why we do the canvassing and we have the meetings and we're transparent. We are very, very transparent. We don't hide anything from folks. We let people know what's going on.
Currently, I think that there's a really good group of people that are a part of the rent strike. So I think that the support with that and the lawyers that are a part of it and the union, I think without them, it'd be a lot more fearful, but they're very reassuring. They're on top of questions. They bring the community together. So it doesn't feel as fearful as it might be without.
So after us being hit with like 3, I think, above guideline increases, I kind of learned what it was. At first, I was like, what's an AGI? Like this person from the Federation of Metro Tenants Association comes to your building, has a presentation. You guys are getting an AGI. Well, what's that? Like, what does that mean? And after you learn, and then actually going to the hearing at the Landlord Tenant Board is what motivated me a lot. Seeing how people are treated there, people just like me, everyday people like us just trying to live their life in this city, and how they are misguided, in my opinion, at the Landlord Tenant Board by mediators and not having legal representation, because the landlord will always come with a lawyer. But everyday people don't have hundreds of dollars an hour to pay a lawyer. And seeing that and going there as a collective, as a tenant association, and seeing how people were treated and how we were offered. I think the first offer we had when we fought an above guideline increase was like 0.2% of the 3%. It was like, when you calculate it, it was something like $7 on the average person who paid $1,000 rent. And it's like, what is that going to do for folks? Like, you're still putting how many $50 through? So, and understanding that the big thing about above guideline increases is when it goes through and your landlord applies for it the next year, because they most probably do, because they're doing capital expenditures, elevators, balconies, windows, things that cost a lot of money, that approved amount is the new amount for another above guideline increase. So there's a 3% on top of that besides the guideline. So really understanding how it affects people. And for me, I had 3 kids. I had 2 in a row, 2 in 2 years. And then I had another one. I was on mat leave a lot. I wasn't working because I was on mat leave and I was collecting maternity money, which is nonsense, it's garbage. But it motivated me more. Like, we can't afford this. My husband was working 2 jobs to just make ends meet. And not that we wanted for anything, but we didn't see him. Like, it was me by myself with these 2 babies. It was hard. And it just made me motivated to get involved. And we had a meeting in the lobby. Someone knocked on my door, a young man named Johnny, said, I hear there's lots of issues in this building. I'm like, would you like me to get my list? And he thought that was entertaining. I'm like, no, seriously, I have a list. And common people with the common goal, right? We want to make this a better place to live. And we officially started our tenant association. And nobody wanted to be the chairperson. I thought, well, I'm going on mat leave. I need something to do. I'll do it. And here we go. How much years later? It's honestly completely changed my life. But I'm finding that with the media, it creates awareness in our community. There's so much power in it. And that's what I'm learning on this journey, because in the past 5 months, I've had people stop me on the street. I saw you on CP24 last night, and I never even saw it. I know I did an interview, but I've never personally saw it. I'm like, oh yeah, you sounded really well. Thank you for standing up for us. Homeowners at the park with my kids in the summer, thank you for fighting. And I'm like thinking, you're a homeowner. No, you're fighting for our community. So that way, people are aware of the issue. So a lot of people didn't know what was happening in our building. The yellow signs was the start of it, where people said, hey, why are they putting up those yellow signs saying stop raising our rents? People had no idea what was happening. Because we're a community where it's about 50-50, 50% homeowners, 50% renters. We all live there. We all use the community. We shop in the community. We all appreciate the community. I don't think anybody will stay somewhere for a long time if they didn't love where they lived. That's just me. I feel the way. I love where I live. My kids love it. My husband loves it. We're going to stay.
You have to start learning how to fight for what you want.
When tenants come together, when community come together and demand, and the tenants are simply asking a fair rent, and they're asking also the landlords being on the table to make sure that they do their part as fairly. But what has happened is the provincial government has not been check and balance with regard to the relationship between tenants and landlord, and now the landlords have taken advantage of the tenants, and this is the only way they could raise the issues and protest and come together to send a strong message to the landlords.
So creating that awareness of what's happening in the building, because people just walk by and look at the building like, wow, there's so much construction going on. How do they get in and out? Like, the doorway's blocked, there's cranes, there's all kinds of things happening. But for them to really hear us in that building speak to what's happening in the building, I believe there's power in that, and it creates awareness. And people choose a side. Some people are like, they're doing something ridiculous. Some people are like, what you're doing is amazing. So I believe that with media and going to the news, there's power in that. The first article that I had to do, I think it was for the Star. They wanted to take pictures and were like, are you okay for your kids? I'm like, my kids would love to be in the paper. Like, they would love for, they think they're a celebrity, sure. And I didn't know how to handle it and how to receive it, but it created awareness about what was happening in our building with the increases, and I got a lot of feedback about it. I work with thousands of people. So I've had people at work come up to me and say, hey, I saw you on the front of the Star. You're the tenant girl. Okay. And that became my name. Like, literally people come to me, hey, you're the tenant rights girl. Yeah, I am. And it created awareness also with my union, where to know that, yes, I'm doing stuff within my union and advocating for rights, but I'm also advocating for rights in my community. So it created awareness that people are like, oh, I saw that you were on the news. I saw you were doing this. Tell me more about it. So just having that conversation with people where I think it's that one-on-one connection more than they see a sign saying, hey, so what's that all about? But when they talk to people and really understand what people are going through and how much people want their place where they call home to be a better place to live, that makes a big difference. And I think that in that way, we're doing a great job. People on my executive will say the media is corrupt, let's not go to the media. And I get it, because we know that there's so much fake news out there. We're in the time of fake news, right? But I don't read the comments. I know what I stand for. I know what I believe in. I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. So that doesn't faze me, but I don't read it because I know if you read it, it's like going down a rabbit hole. So I don't even bother.
The following are direct readings of comments found under news posts and social media posts about the rent strike at 33 King Street.
The landlord isn't responsible for the renter's needs or wants. It's called basic living, and that's it. Other than that, there's a tent. All immigrants should be deported to get affordable rent. Sounds like a bunch of people trying to avoid paying their bills. Damn. Pay your rent or go find another place to live in. If you're not able to afford the rent, it's your responsibility, not the landlord's responsibility to make sure that you can afford it.
The tenants who live at 1440 and 1442 Lawrence Avenue West claim their landlord has refused to make serious repairs while trying to raise rent above guidelines.
The group has now joined the York South Weston Tenants Union in what is being described as the largest rent strike in Toronto's history.
And that's why today the tenants here at 1440 and 1442 Lawrence Avenue West is striking, and I'm here in solidarity to support them.
Dream has played that game where, no, we're going to control this situation and you want to meet with us, but we're not going to meet with you. We're going to meet with you on our terms. So we're not going to respect that there's a tenant union that's been there for more than 5 years now and that people trust and believe in and are members of. We want to meet with a few tenants at a time or tenants one-on-one. And that's the game plan, right? One by one, knock them down. Even the letter they sent, the first letter felt threatening, saying that, there's rumors going around our community, what you're doing is illegal. You need to seek legal advice and come and see us in the office and we'll make payment arrangements for you if you can't afford your rent. But making payment arrangements is just a Band-Aid. It's not fixing the problem because the rents are too much for folks to afford. If you make payment arrangements, they'll always be struggling to pay rent. That's the way I see it. In the summer months, we did a lot of actions. We went down to their offices a couple of times. They came down to meet us because they're in a high-rise building. But the contact has completely stopped. At the beginning, they were willing to meet in person with us, but without folks from the tenant union. They were only willing to meet with tenants from our building, from 33 King Street, which we're a part of a collective, which is a tenant union. And if we choose to have so-and-so there from the tenant union, they should be allowed to be there. A lot of the tenants who are very involved and who wanted to be at that meeting felt like they think that we're stupid, that we don't realize what the law is and what's in our favor. Because at the Landlord-Tenant Board, I believe it's landlord for a reason, not tenant first. So there aren't many of those laws in the RTA that help us, but we are right now using the ones that help us. We can continue holding our rent until they order an eviction notice. And if they order an eviction notice, it'll be pay your arrears. So if we pay our arrears, we're fine. So we've thought about doing a trust. We also thought about, we do have a bank account as a tenant union, everyone putting their money in the bank account. But because of so many people, over 300 people were affected by the 2018 reduction, and about 200 of those 300 people don't know what their legal rent is as of 2018, including myself. But we voted as a tenant union that we're going to all hold our rent. But they'd have to produce documentation to show us how much we all owe, a ledger, a proper ledger, but definitely we would pay back our rent. And we're not here for free rent. It was never about handouts or free rent. It was about fair rent and fair rent increases. Because, as I said, this building's been subjected to the most above guideline increases. And this company, Dream, if you Google them, they believe in philanthropy. They believe in giving back to the community where they are. Okay, give back to Weston. We're the biggest building in Weston, 27 stories, besides our sister building. Give back. Take away even one and see what happens. See how happy people will be. Do something for us, not to make yourself look good in the public's opinion, because that's not working. Do something for the tenants in this building who have been longtime tenants who call 33 King Street home. When we met with Hero, I believe she's the VP of rental operations, I'm not sure what her title is at Dream, she came to meet with us in the building with a select amount of members of the tenant union. And I told her that this is our home. It's where we lay our head. It's where we raise our families, where people have already raised their families, and where people live. We didn't choose to live here because we didn't want to. We're living here, and many of folks, if you look, have lived here for a long time, 10 plus years. There are people there 30, 40 years. Like, it's intense how long people have lived there. This is our home. We want to be able to live here and be happy. And with the stress of the rent increases, besides everything else that's stressful out there, people are not making it. People are not surviving. As I told her, I said, people in this building, you might not know, but I know because I do community work in my building, don't have food. Go to the different community centers and community outreach programs in the neighborhood to get food, are hungry because to them, the most important thing, and that's an old school mentality, I have to pay my rent, I have to pay it on time. No matter what, is due the first, I'm going to pay it the first. And that's the average person in our building. Culturally, my rent is due on the first, I pay my rent. If I don't eat for a few days until my paycheck comes, it's okay, but my rent was paid because I need somewhere to live. And that's a cultural thing. And that's the way they were raised. It's not right. Our Weston King Neighborhood Center, our outreach center right around the corner from us at Weston and King, services more people from 33 King Street than any other building in our neighborhood. Why? Because the rents keep going up and people have to make sacrifices between, do I do this or do I do that? And that's what people are doing every day in my building. Some people open their fridge and there's nothing to eat. And it was a reality. Like we always think of homeless people as not having something to eat, but people who are housed and not housed properly open their fridge and there's nothing to eat, literally. All across the city. I'm not just saying my building, all across this city, all across this province. And that's a big issue. And those are the things that motivate me because it shouldn't be like that. We live in Canada. We live in Ontario. Best province in the country. No offense to the other provinces, but the best province in the country. It shouldn't be like that. But it is because of companies like Dream, because they're just gouging us because they can. They can repetitively apply for these above guideline increases because the Landlord Tenant Board is set up that the landlord can do it and take money out of people's pockets.
It's Ontario, the rent is going up every day. Everything is expensive besides the rent.
I really cannot afford to pay anymore because I am on a strict budget. I'm a pensioner and I cannot afford to pay $50, $60 more a month because I will have absolutely no money for food. Right now, I don't have money for food, but I can still spare the $20 a week to pick up the things that I need. The little things I don't get from the food bank because I'm a regular food bank person. I go every week at least to 1 or 2 food banks. That's how I survive because most of my money goes towards the rent.
We are in very challenging times right now economically. The cost of living is going through the roof and the price of rentals are not going down. They're still going up despite the fact that minimum wage and wages are not increasing. Protect yourself. In the past 10 years, there are a lot of people who are doing tenant work all over the city. If you Google it, you will find different tenant associations and different tenant organizations that are helping tenants navigate this legal system that wasn't built for us or by us. So I would recommend that someone reach out to support system in their neighborhood. If they have a drop-in center or community center, reach out to someone there who can try to help you get the help that you need. The biggest one is the Federation of Metropolitan Toronto Tenant Associations. That's the biggest one where you can call a phone number and someone calls you back and gives you advice to help guide you. But I always say to people, don't sign a payment plan. Work with your landlord if you have a small landlord. Most small landlords are going to work with you because they own a couple properties or a property. But when it comes to corporate landlords, don't sign anything without proper advice and really looking at it and weighing your pros and cons because it's too easy for landlords to evict people right now. And my fear is people get evicted and think that they can rent somewhere else and there's nowhere to go because the prices are so high and they keep going up. So if someone were to Google price of a 1-bedroom apartment in Toronto, they're going to see $26.50. I did that the other day and I was shocked. It went up again. Even though there's no 1-bedroom apartments really to rent, but it's going up to $26.50 plus hydro, parking, whatever else is added on. And how could somebody, a single person, afford that? One person. So I always say don't sign anything, seek advice. There are now more and more legal teams doing housing rights and more aware of how they were 10 years ago, but they just need to seek legal advice before they make a decision because you have to make an informed decision. And don't be afraid to start a tenant association is another thing I say. Because a tenant association doesn't have to all be bad. And that's what I always say to our tenant association because we have block parties and ice cream parties. It's not only about bad. We have to celebrate our community, celebrate where we live, celebrate any victory you've had, and just be with your neighbors because we're in a building, we're neighbors, we're a community within a community. I always say that. So I believe in starting a tenant association that people can help each other. And there might be someone who's really good at something that you didn't know because you didn't start that tenant association. They might work at a law firm that does tenant rights. You don't know. So if we don't meet our neighbors, we're never going to know. We're just going to live behind those walls of our apartments or our units. So start a tenant association if you can, and door knock and get information from your tenants and help each other. I'll be very honest, it is not easy to do this work. Any kind of activism, you get burnout. I think the most motivating thing for me are the seniors in our building. Honestly, they make me smile. But when I talk to my neighbors and they say, thank you for teaching me how to do this, how to fill out a work order because they didn't know. Thank you for telling the workers, no, you can't come in here right now. This is time for people to go to school and work. You gotta wait. Take a Tim's break. That's what I say, take a Tim's break, like relax. They tell me thank you. I'm very outspoken about that. I'm not shy to speak up for people. It's our home. I always say, this is where we live. They don't live here. They get to go to their house, wherever it may be. This is our home, and they have to respect our home and treat it as we demand them to treat it. So that keeps me going. And my mom, because we call her the quarterback. On the nights when we do the door knocking, she's very organized. She's on it. She knows what to do. She's okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to make sure we talk to this person. We didn't talk to this person last week. She's on it. And as she said, she's willing to stay on the rent strike forever. She's so motivated to win. So that keeps me motivated. There's one lady, you knock at her door, and she's like, you keep giving them hell. Like, it's the perfect thing to say to me. How's it going? I'm like, well, they don't want to talk to us. And then I'll give her an update. And she goes, but you keep giving them hell. You're speaking for all of us.